Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss the move towards boycotting companies that advertise on the new Fox News style abomination in the UK, the foreign money backed GB News. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So GB News launched, and surprisingly, to me anyway, with pretty poor production values, not much better than my own. But then this is part of their strategy. It's a little bit like, I suppose, recently Nigel Farage appearing from a sparsely furnished flat to try and help us forget that these people are actually millionaires living in luxury. Andrew Neil, who is heading up GB News, from in front of the camera at any rate, is trying to say that the channel is anti-elitist, because he is very much part of the elite set. But it's the same old trick that both Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage before him have pulled. Incredibly privileged people who are trying to pretend that they're just the bloke down the pub. They're basically trying to pretend that what they're doing is very much what I'm doing, is someone who feels passionately about something and wanting to get a message out there. But in actual fact, it is a very slick operation backed by money, much of which comes from outside the country. And we've all grown up with a biased media in the UK, of course. And you roll your eyes at some of the stuff they say. You perhaps express the odd bit of outrage when some really step over the line. But GB News has been set up specifically to keep the UK on the path to ruin. As such, there are some people who feel strongly enough, not just to counter what they're trying to do, but that we don't want a Fox News poison in the country. And they're prepared to vote against it with their wallets, so to speak. And collections of companies who have been advertising on GB News are being gathered, with people boycotting them in various forms. Now, obviously, I'm not going to urge people to boycott or not. It's not what I'm here for. Or even how to boycott, because it's not as straightforward as thinking, well, you either boycott or you don't. No, I'm a halfway house. What I am going to discuss are what I think are some of the considerations, if you choose to, and the things I've thought of. So the first thing I think is to make sure it counts. If you are going to boycott, if you are going to switch from using one company to another, or just abandon it altogether, whatever, if there's nothing to reinforce your message, the company you're boycotting, it won't know why, and it won't have any impact. So I'll give you an actual example in my case, Vodafone. Now that's one of the advertisers on GB News. I use Vodafone. That's what I use for my mobile phone. I tried to contact them and spoke to someone, but it was like normal customer services. I sort of knew they wouldn't be helpful, and they couldn't. They tried with my query, because what I wanted to know is, was it deliberate? Because please bear in mind, if you see a company on this list, don't assume that they know what they're doing. Not all of the advertisers advertising on GB News were aware of it. The advertising for the channel, I gather, is handled by Sky Media. And of course, what happens with companies is they don't personally handle their own advertising. They just lump it in with the company. Advertise somewhere suitable for me. So the actual advertisers aren't necessarily aware of where their adverts are any more than Nigel Farage realises that he occasionally advertises on this channel. Again, apologies for those of you who have to suffer that, but I have no control at all over who advertises here, unless I wish to make no money, that is. As far as I am aware, at least one advertiser has actually responded that they were not aware that their adverts were going on GB News, and they've said they'll make sure that their adverts don't reappear on the channel in future. I think it was Copperberg that did that. Now, there may have been others as well. So absolutely check with the company first. That would be what I am doing. Now, with Vodafone, I couldn't get any contacts for Vodafone. I wanted an email, and the guy said there isn't really an email, so that I could actually, because I didn't need a one-to-one with someone on this. I just needed an email to go to someone, and not next day. I mean, I was quite happy for it to take a week or so, and just confirm, look, is this deliberate? If it is deliberate and you're going to carry on advertising them, I am going to have to take my business elsewhere. But if you didn't realise and you're going to assure me that that you are going to sort of stop that, I'm absolutely happy with that. So because I wasn't able to make that contact, I made the decision to switch mobile phone company, which I'll be doing next week. Now, here's the next thing to consider. So there are some companies that are easy to boycott as well. Vodafone is easy because I can just switch. I'm not locked into a contract. Being honest, if I were, I would run that contract out, then switch. And for full disclosure, what I will say is I will register my disapproval of any company that I do use advertising on GB News. But I'm not going to boycott anyone who supplies something I can't get elsewhere, unless I feel it's just the sort of thing I don't really need. Then fine. Some people, for example, may be more committed to certain companies and you know, doing without not really an option. So some people may not be able to afford also to switch, even if, like, it's an energy supplier, say, and maybe it's like, well, there is another company. Of course there's another company. But if the company you're with is the cheapest and you are on a strict budget, of course, no one expects anyone to go into debt over this. Don't beat yourself up about it. Even if you do feel strongly, I think it's a case of sometimes doing it where you can. Some companies, easy to boycott. Some products you may go, well, I don't need that at all, so I'll just boycott it even if I can't get it somewhere else. Some things, well, I could easily just get the same thing somewhere else, or a different thing, like a different loaf of bread. You know, so boycotting some companies and writing to email, you know, you can email or write to any of them with your position. That is still useful. I think the communication is more important than the boycott sometimes. So my decision is that if I see a company on the list, and I'm not going to email everyone, some people may, and that's fair enough, but any company that I do use and intend to keep using, I will contact them and say, do you intend to carry on doing this? Because otherwise my business will have to go elsewhere. So I will inquire if they intend to carry on advertising. If they do, or I get no response in a reasonable amount of time, and I'm prepared to give it a reasonable amount of time, I'll switch to someone else and make a note. Now, there are some companies who will get away with it because they supply something I can't get elsewhere. But even then, sometimes I could still reduce my use and therefore reduce the amount of money they get off with. You know, Amazon's a good example. It's very convenient. Some things I can only get on Amazon. You know, there's some niche products I cannot get elsewhere. But if they keep advertising on GB News, and I will check, then what I can do is rather than instantly go to Amazon, I can go, well, can I get this somewhere else? And I'm in a position where I can pay a bit more to do so as well. Then that is what I can do. And the next thing to consider is impact. Does it work? In a word, yes, it does, actually. Increasingly over the past decade, we've seen number of cases where consumers acting en masse have affected major changes for companies, and they have pulled advertising from some things. Doesn't always work, because a cause doesn't always fire enough people's imagination. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't believe any of the companies advertising, you know, apart from possibly the UK government on GB News, give a crap about them. So it's a simple calculation. Do they expect to generate more business from advertising on GB News than they are losing from people boycotting them? And that calculation shifts more towards pulling the plug on GB News advertising based on two things. Firstly, obviously, how many people are prepared to boycott them? And second, how many people remember to actually tell the company what's going on? Because that last one is the trick, isn't it? It's all very well switching supplier or just not getting a particular product. If the company doesn't know that you've done this, they don't know you've done this. Like, it's all very well buying Hovis instead of Warburtons, but if you don't email Warburtons to tell them what you've done, it won't actually change anything. At best, let's say loads of people did it, they'll wonder why their bread isn't selling as much. But if you told them, they'd go, well, our sales are down. We're obviously not getting as much business from advertising on GB News as we're losing from advertising on GB News. We're pulling our adverts on GB News and having a whole campaign explaining that we've done this. And for those who say, and I have seen this comment, well, they're being well funded by those intent on dividing Europe. You know, they don't need the advertising money. Well, yes, they are. But if they have advertising on their channel, let's be honest, advertisements on a channel is not a draw. If they've got it there, it's because they'd like to keep their costs down. Now, it may not even be penny pinching, rather, because I would suggest that, see, the harder it is for them to fund themselves through advertising, that will be the aim, to fund themselves through advertising as an entity to be self-sufficient. The less they're able to do that, the more they need from shadowy backers. And to my mind, that means a paper trail at some points that can be investigated. I will just point out as well, The Sun, for example, people will know, the Sun newspaper, is now operating at a proper loss. So as soon as Murdoch backs out of it, whoever takes over is just going to drop it. That's gone because it doesn't make money. All it is now is a propaganda piece for Murdoch. As soon as someone's got hold of it that doesn't care about that, it's sunk. Similar thing with GB News. Yes, it would still carry on as long as people felt it was worth their money for it to carry on. But that also will depend on the impact. If it's not having that much impact and it's not making its own money, the advertising revenue is drying up and it needs more money pumping into it, at some point that will fail, and then we don't have to have a Fox News style poison in our country. So I've put a link to the list from the Stop Funding Hate website. There are others that are, documenting this as well. In summary, what I would say, the way I'm approaching it is I'm contacting the companies that I use to ask if they're even aware of the issue. If they are and they see no problem, saying, yeah, we're still going to advertise, then I courteously let them know that I will have to reluctantly go elsewhere, or I would do. I haven't yet had responses back. I'm happy to still wait for a day or two, or another week really. And if simply switching isn't feasible, then what I'm doing is doing what I can to at least reduce the amount of money that I give them, and still writing them to let them know this is what I am doing. Where you don't have a monopoly on something, I am going to use someone else. But those are my thoughts on the issue. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.